You're a startup founder. Finding product market fit is probably your number one priority. But to land bigger customers, you also need security compliance. Obtaining your SOC 2 or ISO 27001 certification can open those big doors, but they take time and energy, pulling you away from building and shipping. That's where Vanta comes in. Vanta is the all-in-one compliance solution helping startups get audit ready and build a strong security foundation quickly and painlessly. Vanta automates the manual security tasks that slow you down, helping you streamline your audit. The platform connects you with trusted experts to build your program, auditors to get you through audits quickly, and a marketplace for essentials like pen testing. So whether you're closing your first deal or gearing up for growth, Vanta makes compliance easy. Join over 8,000 companies, including Y Combinator and Techstar startups who trust Vanta. For a limited time, get $1,000 off Vanta at vanta.com/simplify. That's VANTA.com/simplify for $1,000 off.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/PODKATZ13. Just go to Indeed.com/PODKATZ13 right now. And support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
All right, so ready to dive into the world of Donald Trump.
Let's do it.
Today we're focusing on his life before politics. We've got some really interesting sources that unpack his journey from his early days in New York real estate to, well, that time he was a reality TV star.
Yeah, it's funny. With most politicians, we usually analyze their political background. But with Trump, it's almost like his business and entertainment ventures. That's kind of what made him him.
It's true. I mean, he was a brand before he was a politician.
That's exactly.
Speaking of beginnings, our sources take us all the way back to his childhood in Queens, New York. It seems like real estate was always part of his destiny in a way.
Oh, for sure. I mean, his father, Fred Trump, he was already a successful builder, developer, focused mainly on middle-income housing projects. So, yeah, from a young age, Donald was exposed to that whole world. Construction, deal-making, how to negotiate.
Sounds like he was learning the art of the deal before it was even a book.
Right.
But he wasn't all business all the time, was he? Our sources mention him being a pretty energetic kid, pretty assertive.
Oh, yeah. And that actually led his parents to send him to the New York Military Academy.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, looking back, because that's where you start to see those personality traits really kind of take shape. He thrived in that environment, became a star athlete, student leader, always striving to be at the top, always seeking the spotlight.
Fascinating how those early experiences can shape someone, right? So from military school, he ends up at Fordham University for a bit and then transfers over to the Wharton School of Finance, graduating with an economics degree in 1968, ready to take on the world. So did he jump straight into his father's business at that point?
He did, yeah. Joined Elizabeth Trump and Son.
Yeah.
But he wasn't content with just, following in his father's footsteps.
Yeah.
He actually persuaded his father to be a little bit bolder with their financial strategy.
Oh.
Yeah. They started using the equity in their properties to secure more loans. And that allowed them to expand their holdings significantly. Looking back, you can see that early business acumen, that willingness to take risks, a pattern we see throughout his career, really.
Yeah, I mean, even at that stage, he was already thinking big, not afraid to shake things up.
Exactly. And then in 1971, he takes control of the company, renames it the Trump Organization. And it wasn't long before he set his sights on Manhattan real estate.
Manhattan, the ultimate prize. What was it about Manhattan that appealed to him so much?
Well, Trump understood the power of image. Manhattan, with its iconic skyline and its reputation as a global center of finance and culture, I mean, it was the perfect stage for him. He focused on these large, profitable projects that would not only reshape the cityscape, but, grab headlines, solidify his status as a major player.
So let's talk about that Manhattan era. We've got the the Grand Hyatt, Trump Tower. There were even some ventures that didn't quite happen,
Okay.
right? What were some of those?
Well, one pivotal moment was his involvement with the Pennsylvania Central Railroad's bankruptcy. So he managed to secure an option on their Manhattan yards. Huge, huge piece of land. Initially, he was envisioning a massive apartment complex there. But when the economy took a downturn, he showed he could adapt.
What did he do?
He pivoted. He started promoting the site as the perfect location for a new city convention center.
Pretty strategic.
Yeah, really smart move. He showed he could read the market, capitalize on new opportunities.
But did he actually get to build the convention center?
Well, he submitted a bid. He even offered to waive his fee if they needed after his family.
Wow. Classic Trump.
Right. But in the end, the city went with a different plan. But you see his audacity, right? That knack for leveraging situations to his advantage.
That's a great story. But he did achieve a major victory with the Grand Hyatt project, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He partnered with the Hyatt Hotel Corporation, and they completely transformed that aging Commodore Hotel. Right next to Grand Central Station, it was a huge undertaking, involved complex negotiations with the city, securing a 40-year tax abatement, basically a massive tax break, and then, of course, a complete overhaul of the building's design. That striking new glass facade. It opened in 1980. Big fanfare.
So that must have been a game changer for him, I imagine.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the Grand Hyatt wasn't just a financial success. It became a symbol of his audacity, his ability to navigate all those complex city regulations. People started seeing him as this developer who could get things done, even if it meant bending the rules a little bit or challenging conventional wisdom. So yeah, he garnered admiration, but also notoriety. And it definitely solidified that image of him as the developer who plays by his own rules.
Now, the sources mention that his wife at the time, Ivana, she played a pretty big role during this period, right? Particularly with the design aspects of the Trump organization.
Yeah, she was instrumental in the renovation of that Commodore Hotel. Overseeing the interior design brought her own European flair to the project. It's very much a partnership, both personal and professional, and very public.
And speaking of being in the public eye, 1982, that's when we get the grand opening of Trump Tower, that 58-story skyscraper on Fifth Avenue. I mean, was that peak Trump?
Oh, absolutely, peak Trump. With that 6-story pink marble atrium, luxury retailers, celebrity residents. Trump Tower wasn't just a building, it was a statement. It screamed opulence, ambition, and it propelled him to a whole new level of fame, national fame this time.
So he was conquering Manhattan, but it seems like his ambition, led him to look for a new frontier. And our sources point us to the casino industry in Atlantic City, booming in the early 80s. What drew him to that world?
Well, Atlantic City in the 80s, it was experiencing this kind of renaissance as a gambling destination. It was a chance for Trump to, expand his empire, tap into a new market, and of course, add another layer of glitz and glamour to his persona. He initially put his brother Robert in charge of the project.
So Robert was the one who navigated all the complexities of the casino world, getting the land, the gambling license, the financing.
Yeah, exactly. They ended up partnering with the Holiday Inn Corporation, and they opened Harrah's at Trump Plaza in 1984. A major undertaking, required a whole different set of skills and connections than what he was used to in Manhattan.
But this is Trump we're talking about. Of course, he wasn't content to just be a partner.
You got it. Eventually, he buys out Holiday Inn and, true to form, renames the casino Trump Plaza. And then he goes on to acquire other casinos, the unfinished Trump's Castle, the Grand Taj Mahal, opened in 1990.
Yeah, those ventures, they were really successful, at least initially, expanding his empire, solidifying that image of him as a larger-than-life entrepreneur. So it sounds like everything he touched just turned to gold back then. But our sources also suggest there were some setbacks. Was it all smooth sailing?
Well, not entirely. While he was riding high with Trump Tower and those early Atlantic City ventures, he hit a few snags in Manhattan. For example, he had this grand vision for a massive condominium tower, and it was going to be on this prime location facing Central Park. But the site was occupied by a rent-controlled apartment building and the Barbizon Plaza Hotel.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. And he faced a ton of opposition from the tenants and community groups.
It's like he underestimated the power of, organized resistance, even in New York real estate.
Maybe. He also had another ambitious project called Television City. He wanted to build this massive complex. Skyscrapers, a shopping mall, a riverfront park, all in Manhattan.
Wow.
Yeah, huge vision. But that one, too, faced a lot of pushback. And there were all sorts of delays in the city approval process. So those setbacks kind of showed that even with all his, deal-making prowess and that relentless drive, he couldn't always get his way.
He did manage to acquire that iconic Plaza Hotel in 1988, though, right? Spent a fortune renovating it.
He did, yeah. And he kept expanding his portfolio, tried new things like a condo project in Florida, even purchased the Eastern Air Shuttle, renamed it, of course, Trump Shuttle. He was everywhere, involved in everything, it seemed. But then, 1990, the real estate market, it started to take a downturn.
Uh-oh. Sounds like the party might be over.
Well, not over, but definitely, a turning point. People started questioning, what was his actual net worth? And were his businesses really as stable as they seemed? He kept saying he was worth billions, but Forbes magazine, they were doing their own investigations, and they suggested that his financial situation was a lot shakier than he let on.
So the image and the reality were two different things.
Exactly. And as his business empire was facing these challenges, his personal life was also becoming tabloid fodder.
Ah, yes. The late 80s, early 90s, the very public, very messy divorce from Ivana.
Right. And she had been such a key figure in his company. It was a huge story.
I remember that. It was like this ultimate power couple, and then boom, implosion.
Yeah, and then in 1992, he marries Marla Maples, an actress. They already had a daughter together.
Yeah.
But that marriage also ends in divorce in 1999. So, yeah, tumultuous time for him, both personally and professionally.
But even amidst all that personal drama and the business challenges, he was already starting to think about a career in politics.
Yeah, he was. In 1999, he forms an exploratory committee, thinking about a possible presidential run in 2000. He even joins the Reform Party for a little while.
Wait, the Reform Party, that's quite a departure from the Republican Party he'd later be associated with. What was the thinking there?
It's interesting, isn't it? He seemed to be drawn to their populist message, their focus on economic nationalism, themes that would later become pretty central to his own political platform.
But this early attempt at politics, it didn't last long.
No, he withdrew after a pretty lackluster showing in the California primary. But, as we know now, that was just the beginning of his political ambitions. He wasn't done yet, not by a long shot.
And in the meantime, he found a new way to stay in the spotlight. Reality TV. What brought him to that world?
Well, in 2004, he becomes the star of NBC's The Apprentice.
Oh, yeah.
And looking back, it was a brilliant move. It exposed him to such a wider audience. Way beyond, business and real estate.
You're fired became a national catchphrase.
Exactly. It was a cultural phenomenon. And it very cleverly repositioned him as this, savvy businessman, mentor figure, a little bit of a folk hero even. And he used that platform to further solidify his brand, connect with a much broader audience.
So we've got the business mogul, the reality TV star, the husband, the father. It's like he was playing multiple roles at the same time. But that political itch, it never went away, did it?
No, it didn't. In 2012, he starts, publicly flirting with the idea of running for president again, this time as a Republican. But his association with the birther movement, questioning Barack Obama's birthplace, that kind of cast a shadow over things.
Yeah, that was definitely controversial.
Definitely. But even with the controversies, he kept cultivating his image, building his platform, and, really laying the groundwork for what would become his most audacious move, the 2016 presidential race. But we'll get into that in the next part of our deep dive.
That's a whole other chapter. But before we get there, I'm curious, what stands out to you about this pre-presidential career? What do you think those experiences taught him about power, about persuasion, about the American psyche? Things that he could then apply to his political campaign?
That's a really good question. I think that time in the business world and the entertainment industry, they instilled in him this certain ruthlessness, like a willingness to do whatever it takes to win. And he learned that, controversy can be an asset, that attention equals currency, and that image is often more important than substance. And he also learned how to play to people's emotions, their desires, and their fears.
And he definitely mastered the art of using the media to his advantage, both traditional and social media.
Oh, for sure. And all those lessons, combined with that natural charisma and his uncanny ability to connect with, a certain segment of the electorate, it created a really potent force. A force that would eventually propel him to the White House. But yeah, that's a story for the next part of our deep dive.
All right. So let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll dive into the wild ride that was the 2016 election and everything that came after.
So June 2015, he makes that, momentous decision, announces his candidacy for president on the Republican ticket.
It really sent shockwaves through the political establishment. I remember thinking, is this really happening? A reality TV star running for president?
Yeah, and that announcement speech,
yeah.
Pure Trump. Bold promises, audacious statements, and of course that slogan, Make America great again.
It became a rallying cry, didn't it? Especially for people who felt like, I don't know, overlooked by the political elite. What were some of the key issues he focused on?
Well, jobs were huge, bringing back manufacturing jobs. And he went after trade deals, said they were unfair to the U.S., and then, of course, immigration. The wall. He pledged to build a wall along the U.S.-Mexico border.
And he certainly wasn't afraid of controversy right from the get-go. I mean, those comments about Mexican immigrants calling them rapists and criminals, that really set things off.
Yeah, a lot of outrage. Protests. Businesses and organizations started cutting ties with him. NBC, Macy's, even the PGA.
But it's like, instead of backing down, he just doubled down. Embraced that role, the outsider. The one who says what he thinks, even if it offends people. Was that a strategy? Or just Trump being Trump?
Hard to say for sure, but it worked. I mean, it worked incredibly well, wall-to-wall media coverage, and he knew how to use it. He was controlling the narrative, dominating the news cycle.
He really understood the power of media attention. Didn't matter if it was positive or negative.
The outrage economy.
Exactly.
The more outrageous the statement, the more attention he got, and the more his base seemed to rally around him.
And then those Republican primary debates, he was like a force of nature, attacking his opponents, brushing aside any criticism and the personal insults. What did you make of his performance in those debates?
Unconventional, to say the least. I mean, he was not afraid of confrontation. At times, it felt like he was playing to the cameras more than, actually having serious policy discussion.
But his supporters, that was part of the appeal. He was the straight talker, the guy who wasn't bound by, I don't know, political correctness, the norms of polite society, a rejection of the status quo.
Yeah. He was a challenge to the establishment. And a lot of people, they found that, I don't know, refreshing, exhilarating even.
He tapped into something, didn't he? That frustration, resentment, especially among those white working class voters who felt like the system had failed them.
Exactly.
But his candidacy also raised concerns. I mean, his rhetoric about Muslims, about women, about minorities, it was really divisive. And a lot of people thought, dangerous even.
Yeah, his comments about banning Muslim immigration, his, apparent support for waterboarding, a lot of condemnation from both sides.
And yet he kept gaining momentum. It was like he was tapping into something deeper, like this undercurrent of anger, discontent had been simmering for years.
He spoke to people's anxieties, their fears, and it resonated.
Yeah. And he did it in a language they understood. Simplified complex issues, turned them into slogans and sound bites, repeated them over and over and over.
And that relentless messaging, combined with social media, he bypassed traditional media, connected directly with his supporters.
He was like his own media empire. Twitter, Facebook, spreading his message, attacking his opponents.
It was a new kind of political communication.
And even though the controversies kept piling up, his support, it never wavered.
And in the end, it was enough to secure the nomination.
That Indiana primary, that was the turning point.
Yeah, that was it. A decisive victory. Ended the campaigns of Ted Cruz and John Kasich.
And suddenly, this reality TV star had captured the nomination of one of the two major parties. It was pretty stunning.
Few people saw it coming.
It felt like, I don't know, a seismic shift.
Yeah.
In American politics.
Absolutely.
Before we jump into the general election and everything that came after, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. What do you think his pre-presidential career taught him about, power, persuasion, the American psyche, things that he then applied to his campaign?
That's a great question. I think those years in the business world, in the entertainment industry, they taught him to be ruthless, that win-at-all-costs mentality. He learned that controversy can be a tool, a very effective one. He learned that attention is currency, and that perception often matters more than reality.
And he learned how to play on people's emotions, tap into those deep-seated fears and desires.
Exactly. And he learned how to manipulate the media, traditional media, social media, use it to his advantage.
And all of that, combined with his, charisma and that uncanny ability to connect with a certain segment of the electorate, it created this very potent force, a force that would eventually take him all the way to the White House. But that's a story for the final part of our deep dive. All right, so back to our Donald Trump deep dive. We followed him from those Manhattan skyscrapers to, well, Hollywood, and we left off with him as the Republican nominee. Pretty unexpected turn of events.
Yeah, no kidding. And then we had the general election.
Yeah.
Trump versus Hillary Clinton. Nothing like it, really. Two huge figures, but So different. I mean, their personalities, their visions for the country.
Totally. It was a campaign that everyone was watching, but man, it was divisive. Nasty, even at times. What were some of the big moments, the things that really shaped that whole election?
Oh, it was a wild ride. Constant attacks, scandals, a lot of anger. A lot of people were just, I think, unsettled by it all. Trump, he kept doing what he did best, those huge rallies. Social media. He was bypassing the traditional media and going straight to his base.
And that worked for him in the primaries, right?
Yeah.
He was tapping into that anger, that resentment, especially those voters who felt left behind by the economy, by cultural changes,
Yeah, exactly. He was all about economic nationalism, bring back jobs, make America great again. And he kept hitting on immigration, terrorism, like America's losing its power, that kind of thing.
And those rallies of his, they were something else. I mean, just packed with people chanting "Lock her up," "Build the wall." What was it like to actually be there?
They were intense, like a rock concert almost. People were really letting loose, venting frustrations, finding a sense of belonging, I guess. And it just reaffirmed their belief in his message.
But they caused a lot of controversy too, right? There were reports of aggression, intimidation towards protesters, journalists.
Yeah, sadly. So as much as they energized his base, they also kind of pushed people further apart, made those divisions in the country even worse.
Now, Hillary Clinton, she had her own set of problems. Why do you think she struggled to really connect with voters?
It's tough, Going up against that populist appeal that Trump had, her campaign felt, I don't know, cautious, too focused on policy details. It lacked that simple, clear narrative that could get people fired up.
Plus, she had all that baggage from being in the public eye for so long. First Lady, Secretary of State.
Yeah, that's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Tons of experience, new policy inside and out. But it also made her a target for, well, decades of attacks from Republicans. And a lot of people saw her as, part of the establishment, the very thing Trump was fighting against.
And Trump didn't hold back. He and his supporters, they just hammered her. Corruption, dishonesty, said she was out of touch with everyday Americans.
Yeah, and that whole email controversy, using a private email server while she was Secretary of State, that just wouldn't go away. Made people question her judgment, whether she could be trusted.
And then, just weeks before the election, the FBI announces they're reopening the investigation into her emails.
Talk about a bombshell. I mean, just days before people are about to vote, reignite that whole controversy. Yeah, definitely had an impact.
And then, Election Day, against all odds, Trump wins.
Nobody saw it coming. No.
Wins the Electoral College, becomes president. Even though he lost the popular vote to Clinton, how did he do it?
A few things, I think. His message, his ability to control the media, to exploit those deep divisions in the country. He really tapped into that economic anxiety, that resentment. It had been building for a long time.
It really felt like a turning point in American politics. What are your thoughts looking back on that election?
I think 2016 showed us a few things, like how powerful a good story can be, how vulnerable we are when we're divided, and how an outsider can really shake up the system. I think it was a wake-up call, for both parties. Showed them just how divided the country was and how we need to do a better job addressing people's anxieties about the economy, about society.
So we come to the end of this crazy journey, from New York to Hollywood to the White House. What's your lasting impression of Donald Trump?
Man, it's a tough one. He's a complicated guy. Hard to put him in a box. He's a master at self-promotion, a really sharp businessman. But he's also someone who's created so much division. His presidency, it was chaotic, controversy, scandals, nonstop news. But love him or hate him, he changed America, left his mark.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Well, there you have it. Donald Trump, the man, the myth, the phenomenon. We went from his early business deals to his leap into politics and that unbelievable win in 2016.
It's a crazy story, isn't it? Full of ups and downs, ambition, controversy, and it's not over yet.
So we hope you enjoyed this deep dive. It gave you some insight into who this guy is.
And we encourage you to keep learning, check out the sources we talked about, and make up your own mind about this guy, because he's fascinating. He's really something.
That's it for today. Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay curious.